The very injured Orioles seem to finally be getting healthy at this point. Well, that is everyone except for Grayson Rodriguez. Get you the latest Orioles injury updates and recap the loss to the Guardians. Coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles' 10-5 loss to the Cleveland Guardians on Monday night, talk about another rough start from Tomoyuki Sugano. Then we'll discuss some injury news. We got a whole bunch of Orioles injury updates over the weekend that I'm going to run through. Mostly positive, like Adley Rutschman and Kyle Bradish starting some rehab stints this week. And some negative with Grayson Rodriguez being shut down again. And then I'll give you an update on the Orioles draft class from here in 2025. Most of them have signed. A couple of them have not. We'll talk about where they stand there and update you on some of the undrafted free agents the Orioles have brought in as well. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast. But before we get there, just did want to thank you for making Locked On Orioles your first podcast listen of the day. We're free and available on all podcast listening platforms, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere else. Make sure to follow the show, subscribe to the pod, leave a 5-star rating and a review. It really, really helps us out. And of course, we're here on YouTube. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. We are up over 9,000 subscribers, and we are heading towards 10K. Remember, I did the giveaway last week to celebrate over 9,000 subscribers, giving away the Orioles Hawaiian shirt. As a reminder, the winner of that giveaway was Dudley Parr 9817 on YouTube. I asked everyone to enter by telling me their favorite Orioles trade of all time. Dudley Parr said it was the Frank Robinson trade back in December of 1965. Dudley, if you're out there, make sure you're listening. Email me, lockedonorioles@gmail.com to claim your prize. If you don't, in the next couple of days, somebody else is going to be getting that Hawaiian shirt. But anyone can always email lockedonorioles@gmail.com. You got mailbag questions, you want to talk some ball, whatever it may be. Happy to talk Orioles there as well. But let's get into today's episode, and let's start with an Orioles loss. Game 1 of 4 in Cleveland against the Guardians, who are kind of fighting for their lives to stay in a playoff race. Final score is the Cleveland Guardians 10 and the Orioles 5 in Game 1 on Monday night. Let's start with what went right for the Orioles on Monday. It was another big game for Ramon Laureano, who keeps increasing that trade value if the Orioles do eventually, at some point here, before the deadline next week, want to move him. Laureano goes 2 for 4 with a home run and 4 RBIs in this game. Now with a .280 average and an .854 OPS on the season. That is the best OPS on this Orioles team this year. Who would have thought Ramon Laureano would have that number? Started it as part of the Orioles' big 3-run first inning. They went Jackson single, Westberg single, Gunnar RBI single, and then Ramon Laureano bounced a 2-run single up the middle through the drawn-in infield, and the Orioles had a 3-0 lead in the top of that first inning. Then he came up again in the third. It was 3-3, and he broke the tie, crushing a 2-run homer off of Guardian starter Tanner Bybee. Hit it 109.4 miles an hour off the bat, one of his hardest hit balls of the season. Traveled 425 feet, way up there into the left field seats for a 2-run shot to give the Orioles a 5-3 lead. Laureano hasn't hit a lot of home runs this year. It's kind of been the one thing that's been somewhat absent from his offensive game, but otherwise, he's been great. He did capitalize because that inning should have been over, but Ryan O'Hearn reached on an error with 2 outs just to get Laureano to the plate, and he made the Guardians pay with that 2-run homer. And for Laureano, it is his first 4 RBI game as an Oriole. 6th time in his big league career since debuting in 2018. He's had 4 ribbies in a game. First time he's done it, though, since August 4th of 2022 when he was with the A's, and he did it in Anaheim against the Angels. And it was nice to see for Laureano, who came off of a little bit of a tough 1-for-10 weekend in Tampa Bay in the first series coming out of the All-Star break. So good to see him swing the bat well again on Monday night. And he's not a guaranteed guy that the Orioles are going to trade. Again, they do have a team option on him that's pretty cheap. They could easily bring him back for just $6.5 million next year. And he's been so productive this year, they might want that, but it also gives him a lot more trade value. He's going to be an interesting one heading into next Thursday's deadline. What went wrong on Monday? Well, that was Tomoyuki Sugano once again. And Sugano, who had that great run, had that amazing start in early June when he went 7 innings of 1-run ball in Seattle against the Mariners. His ERA was 3.04 at that time in early June. It was looking like a fantastic signing for the Orioles to bring him over from Japan on a 1-year deal. It's gone south since then. In his next 5 starts after that, Sugano posted an 8.87 ERA, but he pitched a little better right before the break. 6 innings of 3-run ball against the Mets in a game the Orioles won. Now, in that one, he walked 3 and only struck out 2, so it still wasn't great, but he was looking a little bit better. And you're saying, hey, if Sugano can give you that every time out, you are super, super happy. He gets a long break. He doesn't start until game 4 coming out of the All-Star break. I think the O's wanted to give him a little bit of a rest, and it did not go well. I mean, the Orioles got him a 3-0 lead in the top of the first inning in this game. He comes out there. He's got that cushion, and he goes walk, single, 3-run homer to Jose Ramirez, and 3 batters in. That lead is erased at 3-3. Then he gives up a double to Manzardo. First 4 batters reach before he finally gets an out in that first inning. Then he loads the bases with no outs in the second inning. Somehow, with some good pitches and some weak contact, gets out of it, retires the next 3 batters, and still puts up a 0 in the second. Puts up a 0 in the third. Looks like he's settling in a little bit. Orioles getting the lead back at 5-3. And then it just kind of melts down again in the 4th inning, allows another run, comes out of the game with 2 outs. And his final line in this one for Sugano, 3 2/3 innings, 4 runs, 3 of them earned on 6 hits, 4 strikeouts, 4 walks, and a homer allowed on 90 pitches. And that is the thing that is it's just baffling that he's walking this many guys. 4 walks is now a new season high for Sugano. He walked 3 in his last start. That tied a season high. He'd only walked 3 once before that. That was back on June 20th. I mean, you look in this stretch, it's basically since June 8th, the start against the Athletics when he gave up 4 runs in 4 1/3. He's just been on this terrible stretch. And coming into that start against the Athletics, when he had the 3.04 ERA, the big thing about Sugano was he had a minuscule walk rate. And his walk rate overall is still one of the smallest among qualified starting pitchers in Major League Baseball. It hasn't really been a full season issue, but that is because he was so good at not walking guys before that. In his first 12 starts of the season, Sugano had walked just 11 batters in that stretch. It was pinpoint command, and he was getting guys out. In the stretch since then, it has been 7 starts since that point. Sugano, it's just flipped on his head. He has walked 15 batters in the 7 starts since then. That's still not a crazy high number, but for what Sugano was touted as, this incredible command guy who didn't walk anyone in Japan and didn't walk anyone for the first 2 months of the season, he just can't find the strike zone. And Monday was a new low. It's not just the 4 walks being a season high. Obviously, that's easy to see. When you dig a little deeper and see where all of Sugano's 90 pitches from Monday night were going, only 37% of those pitches ended up in the strike zone. That is an absurdly low number, not just for a guy like Sugano, who's known as a command artist. For any starting pitcher, a 37% in zone rate is like unheard of. That's how bad that is. One of the lowest numbers from a starter who, didn't get absolutely demolished and walk 8 batters, in any game this year in Major League Baseball. 37% is terrible. So you add to the fact that he's just become erratic somehow. He's not missing bats. He really hasn't done that all year. There were stints, but he's still not doing it. Just 4 whiffs on 34 swings by Guardians hitters in this game. You combine that with below average stuff that's actually getting, it's very marginally, but marginally worse as the season goes on. Sugano, quite frankly, is just not a Major League Baseball level starting pitcher at this moment. And you want to give him some leash because, he's one of the greatest pitchers in NPB history. He had an amazing first couple of months of the year, and this is just a really bad 7-start stretch. He's on a lot of pitchers in Major League Baseball go on stretches for a month or so where they don't look very good. But it's so bad because his way out of it is just getting the command back. That is the number one thing to get to it. But he would just have to flip a switch like seemingly happened 6 weeks ago when he flipped it the wrong direction, just couldn't throw a strike. I mean, he didn't have a lot of this happen in Japan at all. I don't really know what's going on here. And the question kind of becomes, what do you do with him? Because obviously the Orioles at this point, 11 games under 500 and they're out of it and they're going to be sellers at the deadline. They're not exactly pushing for the playoffs. So you have a little more leeway on what you can and want to do with Sugano, but still, he's going to start until the deadline. On the off chance anyone would want to trade for him, I really think that's unlikely, but most likely he has one start before the deadline. It's probably going to be Sunday at home against the Rockies. And then the trade deadline will be next Thursday. And if he doesn't get dealt, he'll pitch again next weekend as the Orioles, kind of shuffle around their rotation. If you do end up trading both Zach Eflin and Charlie Morton at the deadline, you're going into August and September. Your deadline or your rotation options are Trevor Rogers, Dean Kramer, and then Cade Povich, assuming his hip is healthy. We'll get to that later. Brandon Young, Kyle Bradish eventually assuming his health, Tyler Wells eventually assuming his health, and then Chase McDermott, who left to start a couple of weeks ago with some elbow pain. That's assuming health. So that's a lot of guys where you're saying assuming help. You're going into the final 2 months of the season with only really 3 guys who have started games this year outside of Sugano, who you're not worried about their health at this moment. That's Rogers, Kramer, and Brandon Young. Sugano becomes the 4th guy, and then you're hoping out of those other guys with injury issues right now, you can get a 5th. You also have guys like Ronci Contreras and now Elvin Rodriguez, who they just picked up down at AAA as starting options. So Sugano probably sticks around in the rotation for a bit. I mean, maybe they move him to long relief for a little bit. But once Kyle Bradish and Tyler Wells potentially get ready to go and fully rocking at some point in August, if Sugano's still pitching like this, you think about just a DFA because, yes, you want him around to cover innings, especially if you trade both Eflin and Morton. You're going to need to just get through the rest of the season. But if he's pitching this poorly, it's really not worth it to give those innings to Sugano. If you can give them to Bradish and to Wells and to Brandon Young and Cade Povich, and maybe you want to see what Rodriguez has, or maybe there's even a chance you could give a guy like Cameron Weston a shot coming up from AAA. If you want to give those guys those innings, I think that's better for the Orioles long-term than giving them to Sugano, who quite frankly is probably not going to be back in Baltimore in 2026. And at this point, this team is playing for 2026. And that brings me to my shout out from Monday's loss. The shout out just goes to how Tony Mansolino managed the Orioles bullpen after getting just 3 2/3 innings from Sugano on Monday night. Now, did it go well? It absolutely did not. The Orioles bullpen allowed 6 runs in this game, but it's more about the process and the thinking at this point in the season, right? The Orioles lose this game 10-5 on Monday. They are now 44-55 on the season. They're like 10 games out of the wild card at this point. We're 9 days away from the deadline. It's not happening. I think everyone realizes that at this point. It's not happening. So the kind of aura and goals of your season kind of shifts at this point for the final 2 months and change about what you're looking to do. Yes, at the end of the day, you're trying to win every ball game you play, but the bigger picture of this is just as much about development and finding roles for guys and getting ready for 2026 as it is about trying to win every night here in 2025. And what Mansolino did is he went to Corbin Martin, Colin Selby, and Grant Wolfram out of the bullpen, and each of them got, if not their highest, one of their highest leverage spots that they've gotten out of the bullpen in an Orioles uniform over the past year or two. Corbin Martin came in for Sugano, 1st and 3rd, 2 outs in the 4th, holding a 5-4 lead. He gets a big strikeout of Nolan Jones to get out of a jam. Stuff looked good. Then he got himself into trouble in the 5th, but Mansolino goes to Colin Selby, who got Jose Ramirez out in a big spot with 2 on and 2 out to keep things tied after Martin did give up a home run. And then Selby gives up a home run to lead off the 6th to give the Guardians the lead, but he gives up 2nd and 3rd, no outs, and he's able to wiggle out of that jam to keep it a 6-5 game. Then they go to Grant Wolfram in the 7th. He loads the bases with no outs, but gets an out at the plate and then a strikeout and was oh so close to getting out of that inning with a 0 before things kind of unraveled with a couple of walks. He ends up giving up 4 runs in that 7th inning as the Guardians break it open. But Wolfram did respond and come back and put up a 0 in the 8th, which was nice to see. And again, did all of them give up runs? Yes, they did. And all of them had tough moments. But these are guys in Selby, Martin, and Wolfram who, if the Orioles are still in it in the playoff mix, probably aren't getting as big of a shot right now in this bullpen if they're even on the roster at all. It obviously has to do with injuries as well. But these guys are going to learn from being in those spots. And as the Orioles make more trades, I mean, it's pretty apparent they're going to trade Sir Anthony Dominguez and Gregory Soto. They could even deal Andrew Kittredge out of this bullpen as well. You're going to add guys like Cade Stroud and Yarmil Geraldo, who have gotten some chances in the bigs earlier this season, and they're going to get shots like this too. And some of it won't be fun. But the Orioles are now playing for 2026, and it's more about development than it is about winning. And that is development. Giving those big spots to guys like Morton and Selby and Wolfram are going to help them in the long term. Because if one of those three, between Selby, Martin, and Wolfram, becomes a good reliever for the Orioles in 2026, which I think at least one of them will, because they all have good stuff, well, then these kind of moments are worth it as much as they stink to watch. And eventually when the O's make those trades, they're going to be forced to go to guys like this in the big spots. But I like that even with Dominguez and Soto and Kittredge and Bautista and Cano still in this roster, Mancelino went to these guys, and these not the highest leverage of spots, but to keep a game close and keep the Orioles in it. Didn't go amazing. You saw some flashes. They're going to learn from this. One of these guys is going to be a big part of the bullpen next year, and we can look back on these spots where they learned to work through it when the pressure wasn't so high. But either way, Orioles lose the game 10-5 and drop the first of 4 in Cleveland. But we got a whole bunch of injury updates over the weekend that I wanted to get to. Many of them positive, some of them negative. We'll break them all down coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action, why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. The FanDuel app is super easy to use, it's fast to pay out, and it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. So whether it's same-game parlay or watching a bet into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes you feel like you're part of the action. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Just open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. So the O's did lose in Cleveland on Monday night, but in more positive news, they got a lot of good injury updates over the weekend. We're going to get to those in a moment, but I want to get the negative update out of the way. I'm going to run through basically all of these Orioles injury updates we got from Tony Mancelino and others when the O's were in Tampa Bay. And let's start with Grayson Rodriguez. This is the unfortunate one. Grayson, who has not pitched all year for the Orioles, has been shut down from throwing once again with more soreness in his right elbow. The Orioles said it is the same kind of soreness that initially shut him down all the way back in March in spring training. The Orioles continue to say it is the back part of his elbow. It is not the UCL, the ulnar collateral ligament. When you have damage to that, that is what ends up forcing you to have Tommy John surgery. The Orioles are still saying, at least at this point, it's not the UCL, which is why, if you're wondering, it's elbow. Why hasn't he gotten Tommy John? It seems like he's not going to get the surgery because that's not what's going to fix him. And that's almost worse at this point. The Orioles have said he'll be shut down for an indefinite period. This all started back in spring when he didn't bounce back from a spring start. Then they said he had a tricep issue. Then a couple of days later, it moved to back of the elbow pain. They shut him down. He started to throw again in April. Then they canceled a mid-April scheduled bullpen session for Grayson because that lat issue popped up. That lat issue in his upper back, that's what shut him down for 2022. That's what shut him down for the final 2 months in 2024. And Grayson had been pretty open about it back in April. He was kind of changing his arm angle and was trying to pinpoint what exactly keeps going wrong with his lat. He thought changing his arm angle would help. Obviously, that was not the case because it popped up again. Now, he was throwing bullpens recently. He was throwing, but they shut him down. So they're going to reevaluate him. I just really don't see Grayson Rodriguez pitching for the Orioles in 2025, especially because they are out of it at this point. And really at this point, you'd almost rather it be a UCL issue in the elbow. And maybe that's eventually what they find, and he does get Tommy John. But at least if it was a UCL issue, you'd have a plan for surgery, for treatment, for recovery. It's just exactly what's happening with Kyle Bradish and Tyler Wells right now. And you could at least see a light at the end of the tunnel. Right now, if they're not saying it's UCL, you can't do much but just treat it and wait it out and try and throw again and see how it feels. And we've kind of reached 2023 Dylan Tate territory at this point. Remember, he had that weird forearm and elbow issue early in the season. He kept getting shut down and pushed back. He never got Tommy John, but he missed the entire year. He came back and pitched last year, just wasn't the same, and the Orioles DFA'd him, and he really hasn't been in the big leagues much since then. Now, Rodriguez coming from a higher level of talent than Tate is, but that worry is still there. Now, for anyone wanting to give up on Grayson Rodriguez at this point, stop. He's still 25 years old. He's still got some of the best stuff in the major leagues. When he's been out there, 4.11 ERA, 3.80 FIP, 26% strikeout rate, 8% walk rate in 43 major league starts. It's elite stuff. He's been awesome last year. He was awesome down the stretch in 2023. He's only 25, still got that ace potential. There is still plenty. He's not a free agent until after 2029. There is still plenty of hope on Grayson Rodriguez, especially at this much of a low. Why would you give up on him now? There is plenty of time to wait it out. Hopefully this gets resolved. It's frustrating and it's disappointing, but I am nowhere close to giving up on Grayson Rodriguez because I'm pretty confident he is still going to be an impact starting pitcher in the major leagues, hopefully for the Orioles and hopefully sometime soon again. Okay, let's get to the positive stuff. And the rest of this is, you know what? Let's do the rest of the negative. Let's do the rest of the negative at this point. Enrique Bradfield Jr., Orioles first round pick from 2023. He's back on the AA injured list with another right hamstring issue. It's like the third time this hamstring thing has popped up this year. He actually aggravated it again playing in the Futures game. Hopefully he can get back from this. Samuel Basallo did not play over the weekend in AAA. He's dealing with some right oblique discomfort. They haven't put him on the injured list yet, but that's something to monitor. And then Vance Honeycutt, the Orioles first round pick from last year, who's having quite a tough time with the swing and miss in Aberdeen this year, was placed on the IL with a high ankle sprain. So we will evaluate that. All right, now let's get to the positive stuff. We start with Zach Eflin, who had made a rehab start in AA a week and a half ago. He made another rehab start in the FCL in Sarasota on Friday, said he feels good and is ready to rejoin the Orioles rotation at this point. He's been out for a little bit now with a back issue, was dealing with the lat issue earlier this year, was not very good at all in between that. Hopefully it was just because of the injury. The Orioles currently have Wednesday and Thursday listed as TBD on the probable starters. Now, there's a chance, as I am recording right now, that Tony Mansolino is naming starters for those games. This is just incredible podcasting here as I try to look up live to see if Tony Mansolino said anything here just shy of 10 p.m. on Monday night. It does not look like he has at this point, but the Orioles have Brandon Young slated for tonight and then TBD for Wednesday and TBD for Thursday. Most likely, Zach Eflin's going to be activated off the injured list and start either Wednesday or Thursday against the Guardians, so that will certainly be a good thing for the Orioles if that happened. Keegan Aiken's been out for a bit with a shoulder issue. He threw a scoreless inning in the FCL in Sarasota on Monday to begin his rehab assignment. Orioles, I think, planning, since they're now have left Tampa and left Florida, going to kind of move him to AAA for that rehab. Adley Rutschman, been out for a bit with that oblique issue, took live batting practice in Sarasota on Friday. The plan for him is to start a rehab assignment tonight. That is Tuesday in AAA Norfolk. That is a great sign for Adley and the Orioles. Tyler Wells was with the team this weekend. He threw a live bullpen in Sarasota on Sunday. He's getting closer and closer to being on a rehab assignment. Ryan Mountcastle, been out for a while with that hamstring issue, took live batting practice on Saturday. The Orioles are planning to start him on a rehab assignment this week. Not yet sure of the day or the level he will begin at. He is eligible to come off the IL, the 60-day IL, on July 30th. Cade Povich, who's been out with a hip issue for a while, had a rehab assignment started and then stopped because he had more pain. Restarted it again recently. He made another rehab start. This one was in AAA on Saturday. Povich went 3 1/3, 1 run on 3 hits, 6 Ks, 1 walk, 62 pitches, had 10 whiffs. His velo was even up a little bit. He looks pretty good. He'll probably, I would think, make one more AAA rehab start before the Orioles make the decision. And then maybe after the deadline, he's one of the guys that gets added back to the roster when the Orioles trade some guys away. Albert Suarez, the plan for him is to start throwing live bullpens by the end of July as he's trying to come back from that shoulder injury he suffered in his first outing of the year back in March. And then last but certainly not least is the big one. Kyle Bradish threw a 2-inning live bullpen in Sarasota on Saturday, coming back from the Tommy John, and he will be beginning his rehab assignment this week. He will go to High A Aberdeen. He will start for the Ironbirds on Thursday night. Now, that's still, a few weeks of timeline before we're looking at him getting back to the majors. Still probably pinpointing mid to late August for him to be back in the bigs. But that is so huge to see him out there on a rehab mound. I'm going to be locked in the best I can watching MILB TV on Thursday night. Just so exciting. That's the Orioles ace right there. That is Kyle Bradish. There's going to be more time to talk about what the O's should do with him down the stretch now that they're kind of out of it. But him pitching, the goal now is get him in some games, knock the rust off, and get him fully back to Kyle Bradish ace status by opening day 2026. And this is a really good step in that direction, him making a rehab start. So that's the injury updates. We got some draft pick signing updates. Almost all of them been signed, but we'll get you all the info you need on that to finish off the show coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe. If the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait? No, you called the next one. That's why having a reliable business line is so important, and that's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system that helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or computer. Your whole team at this point can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. There's no more, hey, who's handling this? And OpenPhone is offering Locked On Orioles listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonmlb. That's OpenPhone.com/lockedonmlb. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. So that's OpenPhone. No missed calls, no missed customers. So to finish off today's episode, I wanted to get you an update on the draft, which happened just over a week ago. The Orioles, who had the biggest signing bonus pool in the history of the draft since this era of the bonus pool started in 2012. Pundits across America kind of agreeing the Orioles had one of the best, if not the best, draft in baseball this year. And they think they would, with Elias and Matt Blood at the helm and the kind of pool that they have. But they pulled in a lot of talent. And now you got to sign the guys still. Just because you draft them doesn't mean you have them. You got to get them signed. And the signing deadline is on Monday. Next Monday, July 28th at 5 p.m. Eastern time is the deadline for these draft picks to sign. And almost all of them have signed at this point. So I want to run down the list. First rounder, Ike Irish, signed for his slot value of $4.42 million. Caden Bodine, 30th overall, slot value signing at $3.11 million. Vahiva Aloy, 31st overall, signed for his slot value of $3.04 million. Now, 37th overall, Slater de Brun is not signed yet. We will get to that in a moment. Second rounder, Joseph Jerwa, signed for $1.5 million. The slot was 1.6, so he took an underslot deal of $100,000. 69th overall, JT Quinn, the pitcher out of Georgia, signed for $1.15 million. Slot was $1.22 million, so he took a $70,000 underslot cut. RJ Austin, the outfielder out of Vanderbilt, in the third round, signed for just under $824,000. The slot value was just above $826,000. Overall, it was $2,500 under the slot. Colin Yeaman, fourth round shortstop out of college. He has signed, the Orioles announced, but the number he has signed for has not quite come out yet. It's going to be important when that number does come out. Fifth rounder, the high school shortstop Jaden Loray, signed for about $562,000. The slot was about $452,000. He signed for about $110,000 over his slot value. Caden Hunter, the pitcher out of USC, in the sixth round, he signed for about $345,000, just about $2,500 under the slot. Seventh rounder, a pitcher, Hunter Allen, signed for about $148K. His slot value was $272K, so the Orioles went about $125,000 under slot with that one. Kalen Hampson, a small school left-handed pitcher in the eighth round, who I'm really excited for, signed for about $124,000 under his slot value as well. JUCO outfielder Cam Lee in the ninth round, signed for just under slot. Orioles saved about $3,000 on that one. Dalton Neuschwander, 10th rounder, right-handed pitcher, signed for just $28,000 at a $189,000 slot value. So the Orioles saved about $162,000 with that one. And then Holden DeYoung, their 11th round pitcher, signed for $150,000. The picks in rounds 11 through 20 do not have slot values on them. So as long as a player signs for $150,000 or less, the signing actually does not count against the bonus pool money. That is the amount of money you have to sign all of your draft picks combined. So the rest of the picks rounds, I guess 12 through 20, they have not been announced as being signed yet, but as long as they sign for $150,000 or less, it doesn't count against your bonus pool. So basically, because we don't have the Yeaman number yet, and then Slater de Brun has not signed, the Orioles have just shy of $4.7 million left to sign Colin Yeaman and Slater de Brun, and then everyone else past the 12th round. That is if they go 5% over your bonus pool. You pay a little bit of extra tax if you do that, but if you go more than 5% over the pool, you lose a 2026 draft pick, and the Orioles don't want to do that. Colin Yeaman's slot value is just over $600,000. So let's assume he signs for right around that. That gives you just about $4 million to sign Slater de Brun. Now, his slot value for Slater is $2.63 million. So that would be about $1.4 million over slot. Now, the word on the street is kind of the rumors going around is that de Brun definitely wants an over slot deal. And the word is kind of surfacing that he wants somewhere around a middle of the first round money, which is pushing around $4 million, that he wants at least 3.5, potentially more, $4 million. He is committed to Vanderbilt. And the rumors are he's at least considering just going to Vandy and not signing if the Orioles don't give him the money he wants. But it seems like they're going to have the $4 million to give de Brun. It's just about getting that number on Yeaman, making sure the other draft picks, 12 through 20 rounds, are going to sign for 150 or less, and then turning to de Brun and saying, okay, we have everyone else signed. Here is exactly how much money we have left to give you. Take it or leave it. And it seems like that number is going to be around $4 million. If de Brun, who got drafted in a slot of 2.6 and doesn't sign for 4, he's taken a big risk thinking that playing in college at Vandy plus his next signing bonus is going to be more than that $4 million. So we shall see. Now, again, the deadline is next Monday at 5 p.m., so the Orioles still have time to do this. If they don't get Slater de Brun signed, they lose his slot value from the pool, so you lose that $2.63 million, but you won't really need it to sign the other players anyway. It's really just going to be about getting him a number that he likes. And then if he doesn't sign, if you don't sign a player within the first 2 rounds, you get a compensation pick next year to make up for it. So you actually get awarded a pick one below where that draft pick was this year. So de Brun was drafted 37th. If the O's can't sign him for some reason, the high school outfielder, they will receive pick number 38 in the 2026 MLB draft. My guess is that the Orioles will go up to about $4 million for de Brun, and he will get signed. Generally, you don't draft a guy at 37th overall if you don't have a number in mind that you can get to and he's going to be willing to sign for. A lot of those deals, or at least conversations, kind of happen in the back rooms before these picks are even made. So my guess is they will come to an agreement here at some point. Really, the only guys in the draft class to worry about, 12th round pick Daniel Lopez, the right-handed pitcher out of junior college. Actually, after the draft, he posted on social media that he is committed to Division I Kansas in the Big 12 as a transfer. Maybe that means he won't sign, or maybe it's just leverage to try and get more money out of the Orioles. So Lopez might be throwing a wrench into this a little bit. If I'm the Orioles, I'm okay with Lopez not signing if it makes sure I can get Slater de Brun, and that's probably how the O's are thinking as well. But the Orioles have also added to the class, as they do every year. You can also add some undrafted free agents, guys who weren't selected in any of the 20 rounds of the draft, but still are ready to go pro and can be signed for certain amounts of money. The Orioles got 3 of them. First is high school second baseman Joe Philip Guzman out of Shoemaker High School in Texas. He's a 5'9" right-handed hitting second baseman who is committed to San Jacinto Community College, one of the best JUCO programs in the country. When you go to that school, generally it means you're trying to play 1 year of college and then get drafted. Well, he seemingly liked the Orioles offer and decided to sign pro anyway. Watched a little bit of highlights of him. Don't know a lot about him, but it's a very Connor Norby-like swing, kind of small, compact infielder from the right side. Next signing, right-handed pitcher J.D. Hennon out of Augustana University. That is a Division II school in South Dakota. The Orioles continue to scout these small schools. In 2025, he made 13 appearances, 10 starts, had a 4.29 ERA in 56 2/3 innings with a 30% strikeout rate. fairly high 17% walk rate, but opponents hit just 187 against Hennon at the D2 level. He was a 3-year pitcher at Augustana, spent the last 2 years as a starter. He's 22 years old. He was committed as a transfer to Nebraska for his final season of eligibility, but decided to sign with the Orioles instead. It's a fastball, 92 to 95, up to 97. He's got a slider, a sweeper, a curveball, and a changeup in his 5-pitch mix as well. And the other guy they signed, you might know, that is 22-year-old right-handed pitcher Isaac Silva out of Murray State. Yes, that Murray State who made the Cinderella run to the College World Series this year. Silva transferred to Murray State this season, 87 and a third innings as a starter, 4.84 ERA, 21% strikeout rate to a 9% walk rate. But he made himself known on the biggest stage. In the College World Series elimination game against Arkansas, Murray State eventually did lose the game to get eliminated, but against maybe the best offense in the country, Silva goes 6 innings of 1-run ball, 6 hits, 7 Ks, and 2 walks. It was incredible watching him pitch out there with the rec specs on. He pitched at Troy, another D1 school, in 2024, but only pitched in 3 games before transferring to Murray State. Before that, he spent 2 years at Eastern Arizona College, a junior college in Arizona. It's a fastball slider changeup mix, so another small school guy that the Orioles have been scouting for a while, and they go and get Silva, who was one of the heroes of that Murray State run. And finally, speaking of minor league signings, the Orioles added another pitcher with major league experience on a minor league deal, bringing back right-handed pitcher Vinny Natoli on a minor league deal. Natoli, the 34-year-old who opted out of his AAA minor league deal with the Brewers last week after they decided not to promote him to the big leagues. He had thrown 28 innings in AAA for the Brewers this year with a 3.86 ERA. Pretty solid numbers, 29% strikeout rate to an 8% walk rate. Been throwing the ball well. It's a cutter at 89. It's a lot of soft contact. He's got a curveball, sinker at 92, and then a sweeper and a changeup. He doesn't throw a lot, but both get a lot of swing and miss. If you're thinking Vinny Natoli, that sounds familiar. Well, Natoli actually pitched for the Orioles last year. He was a waiver claim for the O's, pitched in 2 games for them last July, threw 4 scoreless innings, 2 hits, 3 Ks, and no walks. Been a very up and down player in the big league since 2021. He has 18 2/3 career major league innings with a 2.41 ERA. Just provides bullpen depth for the Orioles, especially if they start trading guys at the deadline. We could see Natoli back in Baltimore at some point in August. But that is your rundown, the injuries, the draft, the minor league signings, all that good stuff. I'll be back tomorrow. Orioles play a baseball game tonight. Brandon Young will be handed the baseball. He will go against the left-hander Joey Cantillo of the Guardians for a 6:40 start on Masson 2. And then I'm with you tomorrow recapping Game 2 between the O's and the Guardians. And tomorrow we got another fun episode coming up. I'm going to take a look at where do the Orioles tradable players, especially the rental guys, stack up amongst the other available players around the league. So, for example, how does Seranthony Dominguez stack up against other relievers who are rentals who might be traded at the deadline? Like, what kind of card do the Orioles hold? How good of rental pieces do they have compared to the other guys who are going to be on the market at next week's trade deadline? I'll break all of that down on tomorrow's episode. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.